In this video, we're going to look at AP Practice Problem 12. So we'll look at what are the answers and how they score it. And to remind you the context of the problem, there's basically these two population pyramids for two different countries. It takes the entire population, breaks it over two different types of categories. Basically, it breaks males and females apart. So males are on the left, females are on the right. And it breaks them up again by age into many different age categories. So this is something that demographic people who study demographics, I guess you say, do in real life. They look at these population pyramids, and there's the two different countries, so we can sort of compare the proportions. And these look somewhat realistic, right? That most people are adults. There's a decent number of young people, and there's fewer older people, and even the difference in the sexes. It's more common for females to live longer than males, or at least a greater proportion of them. So you see in these countries that the female population of old age is a little bigger than the male population. So just observing these things, they look realistic. We don't know which two countries they are, but they're definitely believable. And the other key thing that will come into play is that these were taken in year 2015. All right, so now we've had a chance to sort of look and understand what these are talking about. Let's look at the questions. So part A says, is the proportion of the female population age 60 or older in country A greater than the proportion of the same set of people in country B? And justify our answers. They want to know if country A has the greater proportion of 60 plus. Make sure you look at all of the bars. 60 plus is from here up, and the women are on the right. And then 60 plus from here up, the women are on the right. Basically, I want to know if country A has the greater proportion. And the answer is quite obviously no, because if you look at each one of the bars, there's 4 of them. All 4 of these bars in country B are longer than their corresponding bars in country A. And when something's obvious like this, that you can see it, you have to describe what you're seeing, but you don't have to go with the specific numbers. You can just say, well, first answer the question. So does country A have the greater proportion? No. Why? Because all the bars for every category, age category 60 and up, all the bars in country B are longer than the corresponding bars in country A. All right. So that was basically what I said. It was no for all those categories covering people over 60. Country B's were longer than country A's. All right. So that answers part A. Part B asks, well, one of the two countries experienced an increase in birth rate for the years 1946, 1955, and then another increase in the birth rate roughly 20 years later. Based on what on these graphs, which country was it, and how can we justify it? Well, this is where the 2015 comes into play. Since the year was 2015, we need to figure out how old are these people now. These are people who are 60 to 69 years old. So these are people who are in their 60s. We want to make that connection, so you should say something about that. Shouldn't just jump and say the category. Just mention that, look, in 2015, people who are in this category are 60 to 69, so I'm going to look at that bar. And I also need to check the bar out 20 years later. Now, both countries have an increase in the birth rate for people who are 60 to 69. So they said there's a spike, meaning they should be larger than the people that came before them. And here, that is the case. Now, we don't know that a few people die or something, but we'll assume that roughly the same proportion would be alive or whatever. Well, basically, there's a greater proportion here, but there's also that in country B, right? The bar of people living in their 60s is significantly larger than the one in their 70s. We need to see the same spike 20 years later. So notice that we don't see a decrease and an increase. It's not low, high, but this one is. Basically, there's an increase in the birth rate. Then there's a decrease. There's fewer people in their 50s here, and then it spikes again. There's more people in their 40s. So basically, it's country B because the people who fit the category and the people 20 years later that fit that category both have higher rates than the decades that are previous to them. In this case, there's not that pattern, right? There's not the decrease back in the 50s here. Like here, it's just constantly increasing. Here, there's a spike, a decrease, and then a spike. All right. So we'll look at the criteria for this question, but you really need to point that out, that you're dealing with the people who are in their 60s because it's 2015, and the people who are in their 40s, and if they're both longer than their previous group, which are the people who are in their 70s and in their 50s respectively. All right. And then, so the last question is, for country A, in which age group is the median age of the male population, and justify our answer. So now we switch from the women to the men. The median is the 50th percentile. It's the value that's right in the middle. So if I'm 38, if I were the median of this country, half of people would be older than me and half of people would be younger than me. If the median is actually 42, then someone who's 42 would have half the people above them and half the people below them. And then I wouldn't be the median because I would have more people older than me than younger than me. Or if the median were 20, go to a third world country or way back in the past, the median could be way lower. If the median's 20, then when you're 20, that's the case. So basically what we're looking for is, in order to find the median, we're looking when we hit the 50th percentile. When do we get to 50% of people when we go in order? You don't have to add exactly, and they did say country A, so here are the men of country A. Just get a rough estimate. When do we roughly hit 50%? I count these as about 12. I mean, they're a little bigger, but if I just do it roughly, this is 12, another 12%. So now we got 24% people by the time we hit 20. 24%, this is about 14. 24 and 14 gives me 38. And another 14 would give me 52%. So even though it's a little over that, right? I underestimate them. So I'm hitting from the upper 30s into the lower 50s in the 30-year age group. So basically, somebody in their 30s is the median. I don't know exactly when it happens, but I know it happens in this category. So maybe it is me. Maybe the median person is 38 years old. But there's somebody who's 30 years old, because basically before you get there, you haven't reached the halfway mark. And then after you get into the 30s category, you're beyond 50%. So all of the rest of these bars, and you can go backwards and do the same thing. If you add up these bars backwards, once again, you'd hit 50% or across it when you get to the 30s bar. So you need to describe what you did. So I basically said, what is the age range that has the median? It's the people in their 30s, people from 30 to 39. Because when I add the bars from 0 to 9 on upward, the total hits 0.5 and goes over that when I include that age group. Basically, if I'm in the 20s, I haven't reached it yet. When I include people in their 30s, I exceed it. So somebody in there was the 50th percentile. Somebody in there has half of people older than them and half of people younger than them. And that's, by definition, the median. All right, let's look at how it was scored. So part A, about which country, you need to say no, because they basically asked, was one country better than the other, and the answer was no. You have to mention something about the lengths of the bars compared, and a comparison. So you have to go, well, I'm comparing the lengths of the bars, and they're longer or shorter, whichever one you decide to compare. The country that, like I said, just pick in the right order. So long as you said, one's longer than the other one, or the other one's shorter than the one I just said, that'll work out. Okay. So all three of them is an E. P is 1 and 2, but let's see, it says only considers the 60, 69. Oh, that's the other one. So you have to have one. So if 3 is not in there, you have to have 1 and 2. The other thing was, if you say everything correctly, but you only consider the 60 to 69 age group, you need to mention explicitly you're going 60 and beyond. So you're comparing all 4 of those bars, not just the 60 to 69 bar. If you don't do that, it's the I. Part B, you have to say country B. And then you have to get the right age groups. So you have to be talking about people in their 60s and their 40s. And you have to mention that, once again, the previous bars are shorter, or that they're longer than their previous bars. Sort of like the same thing up here. All right. So some kind of comparison. So if you mention it's country B, because these age groups are larger than the age groups right before them, it fits the criteria. So E is all 3. P is 2 out of those 3. I is, you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You didn't get 2 of them. Or you get, it's 1 or none. In C, you have to say it's the 30 to 39 age group. You need to somehow describe work for the median. A calculation or explanation is why I have here. So work for the median. This is what people forget to do, to sort of describe how did you get that, and describe why that group has the median in it. So people often say this but don't get these justifications. So use the method I did. Go, well, I started adding them up and I crossed over 50% when I got to the 30 to 39 age group, and you added them up in order. And you could start from the oldest down or from the youngest up. Youngest up was easier because you had to do less adding. Basically, you have to do those three things. All three of them is an E. If you get the P, you have to have one stated. You could have two or three. So if you're missing either two or three, you get it. If you're missing one, you don't get anything. All right. So you have to have all three, or definitely have one in one of the other ones. Otherwise, you get the I. And the scoring is the classic. It's got three parts, so three E's, E, P, a double knock or triple knock, and then you don't get much, and then 0. All right, so that depends on which guy in each category. All right, that was AP problem 12. Not too bad of a problem. Just make sure you're specific enough when you talk about things, especially that part C. Most people don't get the full credit on this because they don't really give a great explanation of how they got the median. All right. So I believe this is the next to last one. The next video will have practice problem 13, probability question. It'll be the last one, and then it's up to you. Good luck.